Hello, everyone, and welcome to another awesome episode of Lucie's Inspiring Stories. Today's conversation touches something every one of us has experienced, whether we lead a company, a family, a team, or simply ourselves. We live in a world that constantly tells us leadership is about doing more, pushing harder, becoming sharper, faster, more strategic. Yet most of us know from lived experience that the moments that truly change us rarely come from pressure. They come from something far quieter, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling that we matter. And my guest today, Dr. Jennifer Nash, has spent years working with leaders inside some of the world's most recognized companies and organizations. Yet her work didn't begin with a grand theory or a corporate model. It began with a profoundly human moment, a simple act of appreciation that reveals something extraordinary about how people actually thrive. And what I love about Jennifer's work, may I call you Jennifer, I hope, is that it reminds me and it reminds us really that leadership is not a performance role, it's a human relationship. In this conversation, we are going to explore how connection shapes performance, why small moments carry enormous power, and how each of us, regardless of the title or position, can lead in ways that feel both authentic and impactful. So, Dr. Nash, welcome, or may I call you Jennifer?
Jennifer's fine. Thank you, Lucy. I'm delighted to be here today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to welcome you to Lucie's Inspiring Stories. So, it's interesting because I kind of met you in July in at the $1 Million Mingle in Scottsdale, Arizona. I don't know if you remember. I remember your robotic.
Yeah, I had a
He was
robot there.
he was the biggest attraction of them all, of all the booths that so I do remember that. Were you just introducing AI as one important thing in business, or what was that all about? Can you just say a word about that?
Yeah, so the $1 Million Mingo was a fundraiser that AC Coswell put on in November of 2025. And he was raising money for different philanthropy and charities around the greater Phoenix area. And so
Mhm.
you and I were there supporting him.
Right.
And I decided that that may be a great venue to launch my newest service, which is called Gen AI, Gen.ai. And I introduced that with a robot at the event. So the robot was running around, talking to people, interacting with them, dancing,
Nice.
shaking hands. And I have an online chat bot that is called Gen AI. And so I offer that service for $5 a month to people. So if they can't afford, to hire a big executive coach or someone that costs, thousands of dollars, a year, that's a very reasonable amount for someone if they're looking for any kind of support, whether it's the executive coaching or just career advice, whatever it is that they might be interested in, to just go to that chatbot, input the question, and out pops an answer with everything that's in my brain from the last 40 years of working.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. It's just like going to ChatGPT, isn't it?
Exactly. Yep. Except it's actually called Gen AI.
It's called Jenny I, and everything that's in your head comes out. That
Exactly. And sometimes it comes out even better and more organized.
Oh my God, this is so funny. Oh, thank you for telling us that. So, I know that many leadership experts start with theory, but your work feels really deeply, very personal.
Mhm.
What experiences in your own life, first shaped how you understand people and leadership?
I started working at a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
and I experienced a lot of role models when it came to leadership. And some of them I was very inspired by, and I wanted to be like them and wanted to emulate those behaviors. And there were many others, unfortunately, more in the other category of leaders who exhibited and modeled behaviors that I didn't really want to be like. I didn't find that they were as impactful. as operating on the other side with the other leaders. And so it really set me on a path of being inside an organization and observing what is going on and how are people relating to the leaders that were, everyone wanted to work for them, right? You were clamoring to get on their project because you knew they were a great leader, you knew they were going to have your back, you knew that they wouldn't throw you under the bus.
Right.
And so those leaders never had problems filling their projects. Right. And so you could see that. You could see how that worked in an organization. And on the other hand, you had leaders where, around the water cooler, you were hearing like, oh, yeah, you don't want to go over there. That may not be a good project for you for X, Y, and Z reasons. Right. Or, oh, I heard this about that leader. Like, you may want to be careful when you're thinking about your next project.
Yeah.
So it became very clear to me at a very early point in my career that the choice of who to follow as a leader was going to determine a lot of my success in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is where it all started.
Wow. So it takes an aware person, first of all. I mean, most people go to work and just do what they're asked to do. And, yes, they feel that's gossip more than anything else. But you were listening and you were extracting, what worked and what didn't work in the leadership world. So,
Yeah.
you often speak about bringing humanity back into business. When I think about that, bring humanity back into business. Was there a defining moment when you realized that leadership needed a different approach?
Mhm. I love this question because it actually goes back to Frederick Taylor. Now, some of your listeners may know who Frederick Taylor is. He's known as the father of scientific management, and he was one of the first people to conduct scientific time and motion studies, right? He also became known as one of the first management consultants. And Frederick Taylor, his heart was in the right place. He wanted to measure how long it took to do something so that employers could maximize, the output that they were getting, and employees could maximize the revenue that they were earning, right? Their salary.
Mhm.
So his heart was in the right place. But what came out of that was a process where it took the human out of the equation. And Taylor would walk around with a stopwatch, literally. And he would tell the worker, okay, you're going to stand up now at time zero, and you're going to walk over and pick up X pounds of pig iron. And then you're going to walk to this place and you're going to drop that pig iron down. And he's timing all of this. And then you're going to sit down and rest for a certain amount of seconds. And then when I say start, you're going to get up and start all over again.
Wow.
Now, the workers had already figured out what the best way to do this, the best tools, the best method, the best process. But when Frederick Taylor came in, he decided that his time and motion study was going to optimize for efficiency. And so in doing that, he took the human out of that equation. And we have actually been struggling with that since then.
Oh, wow. That's unbelievable. It just takes, leaders always leave clues, don't they? And I mean, it's interesting that, yeah. I didn't know that, and I didn't even know who he was. So thank you for that story. You know,
Yeah.
th- there's a beautiful story there about a single note of appreciation at Ford that you're talking about. Can you take us into that moment and why it became so pivotal for you?
Oh my goodness, yes. So I had been working at this point. I went to Ford Motor Company. I was working there at about 16 years into my career, and I was in a department. And back at this time, we have to put some context around this because back at this time, the economy wasn't doing very well,
Hmm.
right? Everything was very, very tough. And Ford had just had a new CEO come in essentially to try to save the company because we were on track to lose $17 billion in
Oh,
2006, 17 or $19 billion in 2006. And so they brought in this new CEO. Well, the first thing the CEO did was to go on a listening tour. And he went around and he talked to people and said, what's working well? What's
right.
not working well? What's one thing you would change? And he did this for months until his official start date. So when he came into the organization, he already had a great grasp on what was happening, what wasn't working well, and what needed to change. Now, I was in a department, and that department decided because everything was so tough in the moment that they wanted to have an appreciation event. And so they asked all the employees to come down and, funds were pretty low. And so they had bought some like little paper plates, the little picnic style,
Yeah.
thin white paper plates. And they scattered them on tables and they put some crayons and markers and stickers and, things like that on the tables. And they said, we want you to fill out a plate of appreciation and tell someone what you appreciate about them. Like they wanted to raise morale, right? And raise
Right.
engagement. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking, well, who am I going to write my plate to? Because, I was really struggling to think of someone. Well, then I was thinking about the broader picture and I thought, well, I'm going to write my plate of appreciation to the CEO because he's trying to save the company right
Yeah.
now. And that's pretty important to me because I want to keep my paycheck.
Right.
So I decided I'd write him a note. And so I wrote him a note and we had just celebrated our 100-year anniversary at Ford. And so I said, dear Alan, the CEO's name was Alan Mulally. And I said, dear Alan, thank you for being the change that we needed to see in order to survive another 100 years. And I put Superman stickers around the outside of the plate and I put it into an interoffice envelope. And I dropped an interoffice envelope in the mail, in the interoffice mail, and I didn't think another thing about it.
Hmm.
Well, a couple weeks later, I get called down to my boss's office. Now that, as you know, is never a good sign.
No, it's not a
And
good cycle.
especially when the economy is so bad and people
Yeah.
are being let go left and right, right? So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like, because all of us were, we're coming into work. We've got, this is back way before COVID when everyone was in the office. There was 100% people, working in person. There was none of this remote work. And so everyone's coming into the office and they've got a box under their desk because they don't know if they're going to be let go. And so they can put their stuff in it. And so I walked down to the, to this boss's office, and I get in there and I see a couple people around this table. There's a circle table in the middle of the room, and in the middle of this circle table, there is an interoffice envelope.
Oh, wow.
Now, I saw that envelope, Lucy, and I knew exactly what was in it. And
Hmm.
the thing that made me the most upset about it was that it had been opened.
Mm.
Because I had sealed it. You know how you put that little like confidential sticker
Yes.
on there?
Mhm.
Then there had like the little twine that you would, wrapped
Yeah.
around it like a figure eight. So I had closed it, right? I knew it was closed. So I noticed it was open. And so I walk in and, I said, well, we can't really get this to Alan. And I said, oh, what happened? Like, did we let the inner office mail people go? Because I know things are tough, right?
Right.
And
Mhm.
like, no, it's not that. We just, we don't feel it's appropriate to give this to him.
Oh my God.
And I thought, well,
The nerve of them. They opened it up.
now, I'm not someone who deals with rules very well, especially when rules don't make sense to me.
Right.
And some of these unwritten cultural rules drive me crazy.
Hmm.
And so I said, oh, well, I don't quite understand why it's not okay.
Right.
And so they forced me to take it back. They forced me to take it back. And so I walked out of the office with that envelope and I decided, you know what? This is a message that still needs to get to him. He
Hmm.
needs to hear this and I want to deliver it. And I am tired of my voice not being heard.
Right.
So I walked out of the office. I walked straight out of the building, out to my car. I drove over to World Headquarters. I went up to the 12th floor and I talked to his assistant and asked her if he was in. And she said, no, he was out in a meeting. I'm like, no problem. Could you give this to him when he gets back? And she said, absolutely, no problem at all. I did great. Thank you so much. So I walk back down. I go down the elevator, look at the GTs in the lobby because I loved cars. That's why I was working at Ford. And I, get in my car and I go back to my office. And I didn't think anything of it after that. A couple weeks after that, I get a voicemail on my phone, and it's from Alan. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like he called me and I wasn't at my desk to answer the phone. Oh no, like that looked terrible, right? But so I listened to the voicemail and he said, hi, this is Alan. I just wanted to let you know that, I got your wonderful gift and it brought a tear to my eye. And I am so thankful for you taking the time to tell me this message. Now, Lucy,
Wonderful. I know.
he's
I
trying
know.
to save a $17 billion company,
I know. I know.
but he takes 10 seconds or whatever it was to leave me that voicemail. And I was just
I guess
the emotional,
they thought you were brown nosing him, maybe. Do you think?
I don't I don't know what they thought. Maybe I don't know really honestly what they thought. If I remembered who those people were today, I would love to look them up and ask them, why do they think that it wasn't okay for me to send that to him?
Wow.
Anyway, regardless. So, I have this message, right? And I actually put a copy of this voicemail message on my website so people can listen to it. And so I'm like, wow, he left me a message. That's so cool. And so then a couple weeks after that, I get an inner office envelope in the mail. And in the inner office envelope, there is a letter that Alan wrote me, and it's handwritten. And it
Oh,
said, "Dear Jennifer." And around the Jennifer, he had put a heart around my name.
oh, how sweet.
And I started crying
Yeah.
because that was the first time in 16 years of working that I felt seen as a
Her.
human being.
Yeah.
Not just somebody as an employee for who can provide output for an organization, but
Yeah.
a human being that had dreams and hopes and desires and wishes and, just the whole totality of who I was.
Yeah.
And that really set me on a course to understand, why do we not have more leaders like this? What
Exactly.
he did isn't rocket science. What he did isn't difficult.
It was
What
just
he
human.
doesn't take a lot of time or
Right.
money, right? So why don't we have more leaders like this?
Right.
And I was in the middle of my MBA at the time at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. So
Hmm.
I finished up that degree. And then I decided I didn't learn enough there because I wanted to learn more and I really hadn't answered my questions yet. And so I went off and did a PhD at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio, and studied really like what makes the difference between effective leaders and average leaders,
Hmm.
or outstanding leaders and average leaders. And it really was the catalyst for me to, conduct all that research. It changed my life. I wrote a book about it, the Be Human, Lead Human book. And now I go around and I speak to organizations around the world about that. Yes, exactly. You have one. Yay.
Book, and I see the many books
Yeah.
behind you. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Be
So it's
human,
a little
lead
bit of
human.
a longer story to your question, but I felt like it was helpful to give that context to people so they really understood
Yeah,
how unique that behavior actually was. I haven't seen it since.
I know. Well, you're having to change a whole, it's a paradigm shift. And those
Yep.
that always take a lot of time. And I don't think the leaders today are helping us any. So, you know,
Nope,
so,
nope, nope. I can't imagine that that would happen. Not today with
oh my God.
we have an office. Yeah.
Yeah, we associate leadership with authority and position, and we got it today. So, how do you define leadership in its most human form? I mean, yeah, it gives
Hmm.
me chills about just what I'm thinking about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Alan is a good example of that, you know.
Mhm.
And I noticed, I think he did the foreword to your book, I think, right? Did he
He
not?
did. He did. Yeah. And I think it's important to say here too that like I was a people leader far down the ladder.
Right.
I didn't know Alan personally. He didn't know who I was. So it wasn't like I was already in his inner circle and he was one of his trusted advisors. He didn't know who I was. So that compounds like what he did even more because he didn't know who I was.
Right. And yeah, it happened to be Jennifer, but it could have been Susan doing the same thing.
Exactly.
Susan, he
Yeah.
reacted the same way. It wasn't just because it was you, Jennifer. He was
Yeah.
touched by it. It was a human kind of reaction. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you had seen him do the work before he even became CEO. So you knew and you wanted to, thank him for that. So,
Mhm.
kudos to you. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, did those people in the mailroom open every one of them? No, I guess not because, yours had his name on it, right? So they,
So I don't think it was actually the people in the mailroom that opened it.
ah,
I think it was the bosses that were at that table with me that opened it.
that,
Because I think because on the inner office envelope, right, it would say like who you're sending it to, who
mhm,
it's from, the department you're in, right? And so there was that identifying information on the outside of it.
yeah,
So when they saw that, apparently they were, making decisions about what was acceptable and what was not.
yeah. Oh my God. You know, um, you believe that performance follows connections, obviously. We
Hmm.
this and you certainly more than pressure or control, which we're experiencing every day these days. What have you seen in real organizations happening? I
In
mean,
terms of in terms of pressure or in terms
in,
of
in
performance.
terms of connection
Mhm.
rather than pressure or control.
Mm.
Haven't you
So
seen
in other
anything
words,
yet?
yeah. So in other words, organizations that place a
Yeah,
priority on connecting and how that relates to their performance.
correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a few examples of that in a book called Good to Great, which I'm
Okay.
sure your listeners have heard of. I would recommend that they take a look at that book. The other thing that I will say is that there's a company called Texas Roadhouse, and I'm sure some of your listeners have maybe patronized that restaurant. It's
Mhm.
got pretty good food, pretty consistent.
Right.
Um, their founder was someone who prioritized connection, and in doing so, performance skyrocketed. Right. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about Ford, where they had, over a 50% engagement rate increase, in employee engagement while Alan was CEO. They had 1,837% stock price increase while
Wow.
Alan was CEO, right? So these are not soft, fluffy, like kumbaya kind of things. When
Right.
you connect people, performance is impacted in a positive way.
Right.
And so at Texas Roadhouse, the example was that, during COVID, they didn't lay off one person.
Oh
In
my.
fact, um, the leadership team took pay cuts so that they could give every employee a paycheck during COVID.
Oh my God, how wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, they created a roadies fund, they
So
called it.
this is this a story that we would read in Good to Great?
I don't know if it's in Good to Great, but it is. I tell the story actually in one of my keynotes. It's not in my book because it came up after that. Um, but it is an example of when you put people first and you connect people to a purpose,
Right.
how performance increases, right?
Right.
They when 40% of the restaurant industry closed during COVID, Texas Roadhouse stayed open.
And
And
what?
not only did they stay open, but they grew.
Wow.
They decided that they needed to change their business model. And so the founder would bring together what he called the crazies, which were different store managers from around the country. And
Mhm.
they would brainstorm together how could they come up with an alternate operating model because they were 100% dine in before COVID.
Right.
That went to zero at COVID. So how do they then shift what they're going to do? So he brought these crazies together. They brainstormed, oh, they were going to create drive-throughs in the parking lot and create packs that were ready to go, right? So you could ready grill, so they would have a ready grill steak. I don't know what you call it because I don't eat steak, but they had a ready to grill packet with like the meat and the potatoes and the salad, and you just drove through, picked that up, and went on your way and went home and cooked.
Wow.
And so they had ideas like this that they were constantly coming up with, and the connection that they created between the store managers and the employees, and the entire purpose of that organization led them to, I don't have the number off the top of my head right now, but it's millions and millions and millions of dollars in store revenue
Yeah.
over the 16 years or so that they've been a franchise.
That's a feel-good story. That's really wonderful. And I think I did stop at one of those once. I remember thinking, I mean, I was intrigued by the name, and it was filled with people. So yes, I was,
Oh yeah.
it was filled with people. Hey,
Yeah,
let's,
they're always very, very full.
yeah. Well, and they should be because people never forget those the human connection like that. Your
Mhm.
humans TM framework.
Mhm.
It resonates because it feels so intuitive, yet evidence based. How did you arrive at those six dimensions? I mean,
Yeah, so the humans framework is six dimensions, which are human. So it spells out human,
mm-hmm.
Humans. Actually, it spells humans. So the H is for hearing, the U is for understanding, the M is for mattering, the A is for appreciating, I is for inspiring, off the I logo,
Okay.
like with iPad, yeah. And then S is for seeing. And all of that is connected by relationships because they are the glue that holds all of that together. And so, as I was doing my research for my doctorate, and then after I finished my doctorate, I did some more research out in the field. And all of that research, as I themed it and put it together, these were the dimensions that kept popping up over and over and over and over again for specifically the organizations that were outperforming in the marketplace.
Hmm.
So I created this framework to help people see, hey, if you need a framework to, build community, build connection, build communication within your organization so that you can lead more effectively and get the results that you're looking for and exceed those results, then this is a framework that will help you do that.
Yes, and you actually have an assessment, which I do. I did
You.
I did take the whole assessment. I did come out with 289 over, is it
Oh
325?
my goodness. That's very, very high, Lucy. That's great.
I know, but guess where I was the lowest? I just was thrown on the listening part. I'm going, oh, I pride myself in listening to people and giving them the space to speak. And, and listening appears to be a recurrent theme in your philosophy.
Yep.
So, deep listening actually, what does that look like in high pressure environments?
Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. It's amazing. I was flabbergasted when the results came out. I'm going, "Yeah, it's amazing." But you know what? We think we hear, but sometimes we don't listen, you know?
Yes. Yes, that's so true. And people simply don't understand that distinction.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's unbelievable. What's one small behavioral shift that can immediately change how a leader's team experiences them?
Stop talking.
Stop talking and start listening. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I have lost track of the number of times that people have told me they don't feel heard at work. That was one of my biggest problems in the workplace. I never felt heard. Now, I am someone who, aside from these podcast interviews, I
Right.
am someone who prefers to listen rather than speak.
Hmm.
And if anyone, if you meet anyone who's attended one of my workshops or facilitated kind of conversations, they will tell you that I am someone who actually does do a lot more listening than I do speaking.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I pride myself, I always think, okay, I'm going to listen so much so that at the end of when the person stops talking, I have nothing to say because I'm listening, you know? And, that happens to me. And it's like, well, yeah, sometimes you don't have anything to say, when
yeah.
somebody expresses themselves and tells you something. You don't always have to have a retort to everything, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
And I think that's key actually, because a lot of people think they do have to have a retort,
no,
or they do have to have a reply, or they have to be composing their reply in their head before you even finish speaking.
they call that communication, or they think that is communication.
Exactly.
One to the other. I don't,
Yeah.
oh, wow. You emphasize leading yourself first. Why is self-leadership the foundation for leading others effectively?
Leading yourself first is the foundation because if you don't know how to lead yourself, no one else will follow you, first of all. And second of all,
Hmm.
if you're not able to lead yourself first, meaning you're not able to control your emotions, right? You're not able to set that tone that you want to set for your team. That tends to impact trust with your team members. So
Hmm.
again, now they're thinking, oh gosh, I don't know if this is really somebody I want to follow, or oh, that came off a little weird. I don't really like how that felt. I'm gonna put my guard up, right? So leading yourself first as a leader means being able to be Alan, let me say it this way. Alan once told me
Hmm.
that when you are a leader, your face does not belong to yourself anymore.
Hmm.
In other words, people are looking at you all the time. People are looking at you and observing and taking their cues about how they are going to act from what you are doing. We see this in our environment all over today,
Right.
right?
You
In
do.
good ways and in bad ways. And so when you're not able to control your own emotions and when you're not able to control what you're saying, and when you're not able to regulate those things for yourself, that comes across to your team as very disjointed.
Yeah. And we have lots of examples today.
Mhm.
We just
Exactly.
listen
Yes. And I would
carefully.
also add that like leading yourself also involves knowing what you stand for and
Hmm.
knowing what's important to you and knowing the values that you will use to make the decisions that you need to make. And if you're not clear on your values and what drives you and what's important to you, then your decision making is all over the place. And people can't figure you out and they can't figure what you stand for. And they don't want to follow you that way either because then you're not consistent.
Right. But you know, there are many capable people who struggle with self-doubt or the feeling
Mhm,
of I'm not enough. I mean, we've all been there. Well,
absolutely.
what guidance do you offer leaders wrestling with that internally? I mean, that happens all the time. Happens to me.
Yeah, yeah, we all face that, right? We've all told ourselves at one point or another, well, most of us have all told ourselves at one point or another, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, I can't do that, or that's not
Yeah.
me, right? Um, and when we face those kinds of situations where we're talking about things in such extremes where I can't do this, or I'm not good at this, or that just isn't my strong suit. We've told ourselves narratives around it that we start to believe the story that we're telling ourselves.
True.
And so getting ourselves in front of someone else who can give you a perspective and help you broaden your thinking around those statements and invite you to think differently about the opposite of those statements and what that could look like can be life-changing for people. I just worked with a leader. I wrapped up their coaching engagement 2 days ago.
Hmm.
And this leader was telling me at the very beginning of our coaching engagement that they didn't feel good enough to be a leader.
Mm.
They didn't feel like they were strong enough, that they didn't feel like they had the skills to be a leader. They didn't feel like they had any power in their organization, and they didn't feel like they had any influence. And they didn't feel that they could sit at the table with the other leaders because they just didn't measure up. And so at the end of, as we were wrapping up this engagement, a couple of days ago, I said, well, what has changed for you? Right? What is different now than it was when we started working together? And this person said, I no longer believe that I'm not good enough. I
Wow.
no longer believe that I don't have the capabilities and strengths to be a leader. I no longer believe that I don't have any power, especially when it comes to like this leader who is exhibiting toxic behaviors around this person. And the person didn't have any tools in her toolbox to be able to deal with that. So shifting that narrative sometimes takes another person with a neutral third party to look at and go, hey, do you realize you're talking to yourself this way? Or hey, do you realize like I've noticed this pattern? This is what you keep saying. Are you aware of this?
Yeah.
Right? That's where a coach can come in and help people be aware of some of these things and help them shift that so that they level up and take their leadership to where they need to be.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah, that's why even a leader needs coaching, don't they? I mean, for
Absolutely.
those moments when, of self-doubt can be detrimental
Yes.
really
Yes.
to your whole world.
We're watching the Olympics right now, right? We're all loving the Olympics. Every single one of those athletes out there has a coach. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Because at some point in that athlete's training, they have run up against a wall. They maybe fell and had a complex tibia fracture. They maybe like lost their ski going down the Super G and like had to stop, right? Like, and who's going to meet them at the bottom of that hill or on the airplane and say, in the helicopter? It's going to be their coach. And
Exactly.
the coach is going to be talking to them and reassuring them that, hey, you are still awesome. You are still great. Look at what you have accomplished. This does not define you.
Exactly. This does not define you. I mean, we all fail in some way, and very often, and these failures do not define us. It's getting up, picking ourselves up and keep going that really defines us. If
Yeah,
if
yeah.
every listener just took one action after hearing this conversation,
Mhm.
what simple practice would you encourage them to begin with today, other than picking a coach? And yeah, and we'll talk about how they can contact you. And yeah,
Yeah, I think, the world today, we need some positivity. We need some good vibes out there in the world to counteract everything that is going on that is so negative, right? We still have a war raging in the Ukraine. We still have populations that are, experiencing famine and drought, and we have a lot of things happening. And at home here too, we have some significant challenges in our political landscape.
mhm,
One of the things that people can do to start putting out some of the good energy is let each other know that you appreciate them and
yeah,
be specific about what it is that you appreciate, right?
I keep returning to a simple but powerful truth woven throughout everything you say, Jennifer. And leadership is not built in these grand gestures. It's built in the moments, the small moments, in the decisions to listen instead of rushing or talking, to appreciate instead of assuming,
Yeah.
to see instead of overlooking. It's those small moments that are so important. But we
Mhm.
just think that leadership is just, I don't know, we just associate it with pressure and hard work. I don't, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what strikes me the most is that human-centered leadership isn't something reserved for executives or organization. It belongs to every one of us in our work, our relationships, in our daily instructions.
Yeah. Yeah. Every single one of us. I mean, we all are leaders.
Yeah,
All have people that are looking up to us or looking at us in some way and observing us,
right.
right? We all have that, whether we have the title of leader or not. If you're a parent, you're leading your children.
Yep.
If you're a spouse, you're leading the relationship, you're interacting in a relationship where sometimes one of you is a leader, sometimes one of you is a follower, and maybe those roles switch sometimes.
Hmm.
And everyone is a leader in some way, in some aspect of their life.
Well, yeah, and people need to know that. I mean, leadership doesn't just belong to organizations. It belongs to everything that pertains to you. So really, I'd like to say to the audience, what's one small, deeply human act that you can carry into your world today? Could be a conversation, could be a
Mhm.
question, a moment of genuine acknowledgement. Small shifts are what create extraordinary ripples. I mean, so Jennifer, thank you. Thank you for not only sharing your wisdom, but your heart, your humanity with us today. So let's talk about how people can contact you. Um, I know that you have a LinkedIn, so they can contact you through LinkedIn, right? Is it Dr. Jennifer Nash?
Yes, it is. And I know you're going to do show notes, so we'll put the link for people for my
Yeah.
LinkedIn in the show notes, and then we'll also give them my website link, which is the
Okay.
drjennifernash.com, where they can contact me there if they're interested in getting in touch. Well, also, as we mentioned at the beginning, yes, they also can find Be Human, Lead Human there at the website.
The website.
Um, and then Gen AI, which we mentioned briefly at the beginning, we'll give you a link for the show notes as well for that, where people can find that on my website.
Okay, that is wonderful. So thank you very, very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And to my audience, next time, this is Lucy's Inspiring Stories. Stay well. Bye for now.